Welcome to the Pink Lady Posse podcast, where women over 50 take a fresh look at living, toss out tired stereotypes, and say a big heck yes to what's next. I'm your host, Sandy Parker, and around here, we challenge limitations, rewrite the story on aging, and reclaim our power, pleasure, and purpose. Why? Our next years are not about a decline. They are our big reveal. Let's go. Happy to introduce you to Sarah Lange. Sarah and I were introduced by a friend we have in common with Revolutionary Communities, which ought to tell you something right from the start. And when we met the first time, we were like kindred spirits of the most magnanimous degree. And then, I moved and she was busy, and so we're back. So, Sarah, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm delighted to be here. And it's so nice to reconnect with you after the time that's elapsed. I think it's been about 6 months.
And it was funny this morning. I was thinking, well, what shall we talk about? And I'm like, all we can do is just be ourselves, and that's a message. And we
Hmm.
were just talking about how I used to feel like a bull in a china shop. And you were saying that you were raised by a Southern woman as well.
Yes.
So, what are you supposed to do as a nice woman?
Well, you're supposed to be nice.
Okay.
You're supposed to be polite. You're supposed to put everybody else before you. You're supposed to accommodate everybody else's needs. You're sure as heck not supposed to have opinions, thoughts, be feisty, be independent. So, my poor mother, I gave her a run for her money.
Now, what's interesting is there are still people. I use this analogy of if I were to inherit a Victorian house, I would update the carpet and change out the sofa. But why we inherit these beliefs and hold on to them like they're sacred when they're a couch that needs to go?
Yeah. Needs to be torched on the front lawn
I
is what
mean,
that needs.
out of
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. One of my big realizations, and this happened when I was in college, was that, just because my mother believed it to be true didn't mean that it was true. So, she had a very particular idea of what a girl was supposed to be, and I did not meet any of those criteria. I grew up sandwiched between two brothers. I was a tomboy. I was more interested in keeping up with them than I was in doing anything she wanted me to do. And it just suddenly dawned on me in college, like, oh, that's her definition of a woman, and I can have my own definition of a woman. And um her favorite phrase was, you need to be more ladylike. And I remember I said to her at some point in my college career, like, I'm more interested in being a woman.
Wow! Okay. Well, I was telling you
Yeah.
that I've often felt like a bull in a china shop. That's what my
Yeah.
mother would say. You're like a bull in a china shop. But you know what? As you live through life, and I know this experience to be true for you, you come into a moment where you go, I'm a badass. Like, I remember my first $1 million contract. I think it was with Vogue magazine or Southern. And I thought, but bam, look at me go.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I'm not small at all. I don't
Yeah.
even know if I can go back in the container.
Why would you want to?
But you
It's
kind of run into your own limitations of your own expectations of yourself. So
Mhm.
what's an experience where you said, "Holy cow, look what I did." And now I
Yeah,
know it's over $100 million or something, but it couldn't be the first one. So the time when
yeah.
you went, "Holy cow."
I think one of those moments for me, and this goes back to kind of like breaking like expectations and family binds and things. I suddenly realized I was making more than my father had as a corporate lawyer. And yeah, that my company revenue was double what he was making as a corporate lawyer. And I always thought, he was like at the top of his game and earning so much money. Not to take away from him, he was a brilliant corporate lawyer and, went before the EPA and just had a brilliant career. But I realized I had this construct in my head that I wasn't allowed to make more money than he was. And it was only after I broke that barrier. And I didn't even know I'd broken it, but when I found out that I had, I was like, damn, look at me. I'm making more than a corporate lawyer. So that was a real boon for me. And also just comparing myself to other people who do what I do and realizing that I was raising 2 to 3 times more than they had at the same point in their career. So I realized I had something special. And it's really when I got out of my own bubble and
Okay.
started looking at some data that I realized just what a badass I
Okay.
am.
So, but to what do you attribute the 2x, 3x results?
Oh, I will just say because I don't just accept what's handed to me.
Mhm.
So I have always been endlessly curious, and I'm also an innovator. So I'm always looking at how can we do more? How can we do better? And I started to realize that the approaches that most people had taught me were something that I considered old school.
Mhm.
And so I started innovating and looking at things like donor psychology. Well, if you want to get money out of donors, you better understand their psychology, right? So I went off to Scotland and studied with the founders of the field for 5 days because I was like, all right, now I can teach these techniques to my clients who are talking to their donors so we can unleash more money, or I can integrate it into the materials we're creating. So I'm just always, so I've studied message marketing, donor psychology, neuro linguistic programming. Why? Because most of our decision making is subconscious. And if we want to get at the decision making centers for people, not to manipulate them, but to unleash their decision making to give this organization money. And so I better understand how to pop the hood and get in there, right? So
I
I'm
love
just,
that.
yeah, I'm just always curious about how can we do better? How can we do more? Is this really working in terms of the results? And most of the time I'm like, nope, it's not. So I have to go off and, get out my Tinker Toys and build a new thing.
Well, just for context, you're in the nonprofit world. You help nonprofits raise money.
Yep.
That's
So
what
I've
you do.
been raising money since 1989, and I've leveraged over $2 billion for nonprofits to further their mission.
Well, what I am doing is helping women over 50 come alive again.
Yeah.
And it still takes innovation. I was reading something the other day about showing up as possibility,
Oh, wow. I love that.
right? Rather than just showing up, right? We have a
Yeah.
vision board experience. We go, just show up. Well, no, show up as possibility. Because when you go to fix things, what you do is do what you already know how to do. So you're just repeating the past.
Yeah. I
There's
love
no
that.
innovation, there's no more, there's no
Mm.
expansion, there's no collaboration, right? And oh,
Yeah.
let me do what I know what to do will bring you where you've already been.
Right.
So, what I'm trying to do with women is change the way they think about aging, that it's not a slow decline where you just eliminate all the good stuff, and finally that's the end. You could have a grand reveal. And I love the word you used earlier, unapologetic.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Wonderful.
have no reason, even if somebody doesn't agree with who I am and the way I am, that's not about me. Like, I know I'm an extraordinarily good person. I know that I have an extraordinarily high level of integrity and care and compassion. I treat other people with respect and dignity. And so I know who I am. So if somebody doesn't like me or doesn't agree with me, okay, that's completely your right. You get to be a human being with your own opinions and thoughts. And as long as you're not trying to like shove them down my throat, we're fine,
Well, I
you know.
used to do this thing. I used to manage a global market for a translation company. And I every Friday I had Big Think Friday, where if I thought someone who was a little out of reach for me, like, oh, they're way too, I would send them, requests. Could I have a 10-minute conversation? I'm on Big Think Friday and you're in my world. And
Love that.
so many times they would honor my bold request because first of all,
Yeah.
they haven't had that request ever, and then we would
Yeah.
come across different things and they could bring a seed of thought to what I already had that just would make it so they go, why don't you do this? And I'm like, yeah, why don't I do that? But that whole notion of being bigger, being more, I think I was using the words, I'm too big, I'm too loud, I'm too out there, I'm not like the common cup of tea.
Yeah. And I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and they're not my cup of tea sometimes. So it's okay. There's lots of different types of tea in the world, you know?
Well, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. I one of the things we were talking about earlier is um how you and I are both like bold and feisty and independent, and um I just want to let people know I didn't start out that way. I used to be a complete people pleaser. I was worried about what other people thought of me and like dimmed my light. And a lot of people meet me now and they're like, "You're lying." I'm like, "Oh no, that was a whole lifetime ago. Thank God." But it
How
doesn't
did
mean
that
that
happen?
um therapy, lots of therapy, with good counselors. Um I went to through some coaching programs. I tried different healing modalities, went on retreats and stuff. So it took time for me to kind of unpack what I had inherited from my parents in terms of the legacy. And I just want to tell people like, you could be the shyest, like, person with the lowest self-esteem on the planet, and it doesn't mean that you can't step out into a space where you are bold and brave and outrageous. It just, like, good God, I used to be a doormat. Like, people would be like, "Oh, could you do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Even if it cost me at a cellular level, I was such a people pleaser that I turned myself into a doormat. And I remember the first time I actually said no, like just came straight out and said no and refused a request. I was 20 years old. I had already yesed myself right into a corner and was going to be up all night fulfilling requests and taking care of the obligations that I had made. And somebody else came along and said, "Oh, can you do X, Y, and Z?" They actually wanted me to write an article for the college newspaper. I just looked at them and I said, "Yeah, that's not something I can do." Now, I thought that the earth was going to split open. I was going to be struck by lightning, that floods and tornadoes. Like, I was expecting like this huge response. She was like, "Okay." I was like, "Wait, what?" I thought she was gonna yell at me and scream at me and hate me. And she was just like, "Okay, well, maybe in a couple weeks." I'm like, "Maybe in a couple weeks." The earth didn't stop spinning. I was not smoked down by lightning. And that was like, oh, I said no and I'm not dead.
Well,
Imagine that.
I love that you brought up therapy
Hmm.
because I think we all go through times where we need support,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Quick
right?
question. Have you noticed how easy it is to drift through this season of life? Not unhappy, just slightly checked out. Yeah, that. At Think Pink, we don't fix women. We help them come alive again. Honest conversation. Easy occasions for discovery. No duct taping a smile over burnout. No reinvent your entire life by Tuesday. Just people who care and gentle nudges that help you feel like yourself again. I mean, the truth is, you can't be your best self by yourself. If that sentence made something in you nod, we made a free Think Pink starter gift just for you. Come take a look. No fixing, just connection. Go to pinkladyposse.com and click on Think Pink. Stay awake to your own life and not alone.
We all go through times where we need support.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I have this pink theory with P is pause, I is identify the curve you're looking at, right? N is nudge yourself anyway. Come on, sister, we can do it. And then keep it alive.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
we were just doing a vision board experience, and one of the people said, well, this is great if I can keep it alive. That, to me, is the trick of accountability and partnership and support.
Hmm.
So even through this last 3 months, I think I was doing the TED Talk, I was packing and moving, then a cruise, and then two new churches. My husband's a pastor. And I'm like, okay, if you don't know you're in a liminal space, you're in a hazard.
Exactly.
So I said, okay, I'm about to go through transition. I should get some anchor points. And
Hmm.
one of those anchor points is a therapist. One of those anchor points is my hospice group. And when Rodney died in 2019, my hospice group stayed together. So
Mm.
we've met on Zoom every Monday for 6 years.
That's amazing.
If I don't show up, they're looking for me, right? So I
Yeah.
know I'm flying with a net under me.
Yeah.
And that really is important, and more important sometimes than others. But we were talking about, I'm looking for professionals who deal with women during these times of change, right? Because if you're going through a divorce, your divorce attorney is not going to be your emotional support.
No.
No, but it would be nice to pair it up with a little emotional support. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the coaching and the connection that we do in Pink Lady Posse.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's a little bit on hold of their people. Like they don't really know what to do. So we're in the process of teaching CPAs and philanthropists and divorce attorneys and widowers, financial executives. Hey, give her some support. We're right over here. And you keep doing your thing because
Yeah.
every change they met with somebody said, every dollar she spends comes with emotional reaction.
Yeah.
So I love what you were saying about learning. You said it was the 5 F's or something. What was that program?
The fundamental five,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Or
The
yeah.
fundamental 5. But I mean, they've thought it through, right? And it's something to learn.
Yeah.
So you can actually learn what kind of thinking people are going through and then offer support for those kind of times.
Yeah. I am just a very deep believer that sisterhood is sacred.
It is.
I have two best friends. We've all known each other since age 19, and usually triads don't work, but this one does. We call ourselves the Three Musketeers, and we have walked each other through everything, you know, birth, deaths of parents, divorces, like relocation. One of the triad just sold her home and moved and is now job searching. And so that's pretty stressful, when you're
Oh,
older and there's age discrimination in the workforce. And this is probably her last full-time employment gig. And so, she feels a lot of pressure to like get a decent salary for obvious reasons. But, you know, the employers are also going to be like, oh, this is probably her last full-time employment gig. And so, it's hard enough out there in the workforce, but then when, you're a woman and you're a little older, you face a whole nother set of issues. And so I think it's so important to go back to, your sisters and be able to have a place where you can vent and get support and ask those questions. And,
well,
one of the things I was saying earlier to you is like, I'm a complete badass, and yet I forget I'm a badass.
you go,
Like, I just forget. And, it's like I joke with a colleague of mine who's in the publishing business. I said, I think I might be the only published author who doesn't talk about her book. She's like, what? She's like, you need to do more of that. I'm like, well, it was published in 2017, and like, I feel like it's kind of like past the expiration date. I mean, the information is still relevant, but it just, for me, seems silly to promote a book that I wrote, coming up on 10 years ago. So, of course, my next one is coming out soon. But yeah, I think we all forget. And the thing that I love about sisterhood is they build you up and they remind you of who you are. Like there's all different kinds of women's groups that I pop in on. And, there's this one place where I go to a monthly, it's a women's event. And I walk in the door, and the owner of the facility is like, "Oh my God, hi, it's so good to see you." And just getting that response from another woman is like, just fills me right up. And I'm like, "Oh, that felt really good." And she'll come over and hug me. And it's just so nice to be received by other women and just to get loved up on. And it just is so nourishing. So for me, I think it's really important to like build your posse, right?
Yeah, well, the other thing too is I have a little phrase on a Pink Lady Posse. Say you can't be your best self by yourself. Because I don't even know what I think till I start saying it out loud to you. And then I go, wow, I really like that was good.
Yeah.
But it in here is a frightening place, you
Yeah,
know.
it can be. I mean, I would never want anybody to do like a mind meld with me because they probably need trauma therapy for the next rest of their life. Like, I don't want to know what's up there half the time, but
But I think that's where, like the day I met you, I knew you were in my life forever, right? Like
yeah,
there's another one of them, not of me, but another one I want to know.
yeah.
And then holding on to those people that you value and then just really making an effort to stay in contact. Because I think they say women between the age of 50 and 80 go through 5 to 7 major transitions:
Oh wow. I can see
job
that. Yeah.
change,
Yeah.
job retirement, downsizing the house, some sort of a surgery, maybe caregiving, maybe cataract. I'm about to have cataract surgery.
Oh, there you go.
Cataract surgery. I've already done the hips and the knees, so I'm going to
Yeah.
get it all figured out before I'm, 70 in April. But
Yeah.
I think that we don't realize that the ebb and flow of what we go through
Hmm.
really need support because it's so easily to retract. I'm not driving at night, so I don't go to socials. I'm not. And a lot of these women's groups like AARP and Red Hat Society and the Silver Tent, they're all, let's all get together at a neighboring town. I'm like, no, let's don't. Let's just wear our pajamas and meet on Zoom.
Yeah.
But not everybody feels that way, but it's so convenient if you put it in a regular structure. I really like it.
Yeah, I agree. I think connecting with other women on a regular basis is critical for our well-being. And I think the other piece is I I just see so many times that society expects us to just bear these burdens alone. And I don't think people understand what we're going through and how much energy it just takes from us. Like it's not easy to sell your house and relocate and downsize. Especially if you've been like I've been in this house since 1999. I don't I don't want to think about like packing things up and moving.
Let me tell you, you don't want to do
No,
that. I've
I
done it
don't.
twice. So 3 years ago, my family home in Austin, I cleared it out, I rented it out, and I moved to a small town to marry my husband.
Yeah.
We were there 3 years, and now we're moving to another small town. And I'm like, my
Yeah.
identity has to be intact. Or when I go from there to there to there, I get to where I don't even know myself anymore
Yeah. Yeah.
unless I'm really clear about where I stand and what matters to me. But
Exactly. Because and also then you need to find those other women to hold the mirror up for you.
absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to wind up here in a second, but I want to give you the chance to say if you were going to sprinkle magic dust on any woman that hears this and she heard you say it, like what would it be?
Mm. So it can be scary, but do it anyway.
It can be scary, but do it anyway.
Yep. A lot of the stuff that I have done in my life, I have done while shaking in my boots.
Well, I'm a coach and I've been a coach for a long time. And in one program, they had to have certain results in a certain period of time. And, that requires bold asking, right?
Yes,
Is that
100%.
is that a yes from you? Right? You had to practice. Is that a yes? Instead of so this one little girl, I'll never not she was probably 25, but she's a beautiful model. And she goes, I can't do it. I said, oh yes, you can do it and you will do it, but let's do some practice. So I put her in the car and I drove through the Starbucks. I said, okay, now what we're going to do is practice being unreasonable. And so
I
what
love
you're
it.
going to you're going to ask the person, I'd like a caramel macchiato, half in one cup and half in the other cup, and just don't speak. And I mean, literally, she was shaking in her shoes.
Yeah,
I'm like, that guy doesn't care. And so she did it. And we got to the window and I said, are you wondering why we ask you? And he goes, I don't care. And I'm like, she was just like, oh my God, if this is what I have to do, I'm never going to make it. And she did make it. But you have to go through that. The world didn't fall apart.
right.
And what seemed slightly unreasonable
Yeah.
didn't alter anything for anybody else. But if you're not
Yeah.
used to it, it takes practice. So one of our
Yeah.
cinder blocks in our program is practicing being unreasonable. Because I remember the first time somebody said, oh, you need them to pay you. I was like, what do I do? You say, may I have your credit card? Or would you like to pay cash? And I mean, I remember when I said that, like, ooh,
Right.
you put
I
that
know.
anxiety in it, it creates this really horrible,
Yeah.
but
Well, one of the things that I like to do to cement these moments
mhm.
is that when I do something that I didn't think I could do, I like to make sure that I celebrate myself because
How
that,
do you?
well, it depends on where I am. So, for example, a couple years ago, I hiked to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and back, and we did it all in one day. Most people hike down, sleep over. Nope. The group that I was with, we were just going down and out. And that's a lot. It's like a very steep switchback trail. And I just said to myself, I'm just going to show up and listen to my body and do what I can do. And I kept checking in with my body, and my body was like, yeah, we can keep going. So I just took my time. I was like the pokey puppy of the group. No one cared because I was like, oh, they're all going to be judging me. We got to the top and we all let out like this collective wahoo! Like we all screamed at the top of our lungs and we were joking around, like beating our chest. But then we started hugging each other and saying, congratulations, good for you. I'm so proud of you. And just that feeling of completion and celebration. So if I'm by myself, maybe I'll like light a candle and kind of just take a quiet moment to think about like, how do I feel before I did this? And now how do I feel? And what does this make possible? It's like you said, show up in possibility, right? So I always just take that moment to like anchor it in and then ask, what does this make possible? Because
Oh,
you've just expanded, right? So you
expanded.
want
And
to
you
hold
feel
the
the expansion
expansion.
when it's going on, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, I could talk to you forever.
I know. I
I
feel
just
the same
think you're
way.
the greatest. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for sharing your beingness with us, right? Like it's who we're being in the world and
Yeah.
what we get out of it. And I'll just share one more story. When I was doing the TED Talk, which I was thrilled about, I thought, you know what? If I do something extra every day between now and then, I get to arrive there having done something extra that only I know. And it's not about what I did, it's about who I get to be. When I'm there, who I
Yeah.
get to be is me at my best.
Yeah.
And that is the gravy train.
I know, but it's also such a gift to the world that you're willing to do that and show up that way, right? So not only are you giving the gift of yourself, but you're also giving the gift of showing others how that's done.
I know. Well, and it was really beautiful because all my daughters came.
Oh, I love that.
And so they're sitting there, and I'm being a witness for what my mouth has been talking about, right? In fact, out of all the TED Talks globally, only 5% are women over the age of 65.
Really?
Yeah, I was surprised. So I'm like, now it was like marching down and up that hill to get there. And I was so nervous, but you know what? I did it. I completed it. I celebrated, and I'm different now because of it.
Of course you are,
And it was
right?
fabulous.
Of course it was.
So thank you for joining me. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to have a link in our show notes so that people can listen to your podcast. But I just want to say, I think you're the bomb diggity.
Aw, thank you. I feel the same way about you, and I really appreciate you having me on your show.
Hey, it's so good to connect. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Mwah.
Thanks for tuning in to Pink Lady Posse Podcast, where women go from what now to what's next. Come join us at pinkladyposse.com, where we share community, resources, and tools to support your next beautiful chapter. With love, light, and a little lipstick. See you next time.